here with the third last Greater Brisbane weekly update for 2025. It's a big one this week. We've got major state moves on child safety, new youth bail laws, an energy policy fight, museum sponsorship controversy, council plans that both expand and restrict short stay accommodation, also hope for more active transport, and a heap more. This video is sponsored by YB Painting and Wise and Silent Travel Insurance, and I'll tell you how to claim some exclusive discounts later in this video, but let's get to the updates. First up, statewide items that affect everyone across Brisbane, Ipswich, Logan, Moreton Bay and the Redlands. A 10-month review from the Queensland Child Death Review Board has landed, and it's a sobering read. The board found that Ashley Paul Griffith, one of the worst pedophiles in Australia, could have been detected and stopped on at least 5 separate occasions, and there were more than 18 points where offending could have been detected or disrupted earlier. The board points to systemic failures and specifically highlights the absence of a reportable conduct scheme, a measure recommended by the 2017 Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. The report says that had Queensland implemented that scheme, many of those missed opportunities would never have occurred. The review contains 28 recommendations. A few of the headline reforms that the state has committed to are fast-tracking a reportable conduct scheme. The government has indicated it will start in full by the 1st of July next year. Creating a child safeguarding intelligence hub to connect data and alerts. Bringing the child safe standards, working with children checks and reportable conduct powers under a single regulator, and better justice and support pathways for victim survivors. We'll keep following this closely, and I'll let you know when the legislation is finalised and what it means for caregivers, parents and institutions in Greater Brisbane and the rest of the state. Of course, make sure you're subscribing with all notifications turned on so you don't miss out. And now from keeping children safe to keeping the community safe from children. The state government's rolling out new laws aiming to tighten bail monitoring for young offenders. Under the proposed Youth Justice Electronic Monitoring Amendment Bill 2025, the state would make electronic monitoring, that is GPS ankle tags, permanent and expand it statewide. That means more youth as young as 10 years old on bail could be fitted with trackers, with the stated goal of reducing reoffending and cutting victim numbers. The ministers say that this is part of a broader plan, tougher consequences for crime, more police presence, early intervention and rehabilitation, all under the banner of making Queensland safer. But not everyone's convinced. Devices depend on stable housing, charged batteries and reliable 4G coverage, all things that many vulnerable young people don't have. Past trials tell a mixed story. An earlier GPS tracking pilot only fitted a handful of young people, and about 1/3 of those still breached bail while monitored. Critics also argue that simply tracking kids does nothing to fix the deeper issues driving youth offending, like poverty, instability, lack of support and structural disadvantage. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this the right step towards safer communities, or just another layer of control that might punish kids without fixing the real problems behind their offending? Next, a quick update on energy policy in Queensland, where 2 very different takes on the same law are now in the spotlight. On one hand, the state government has passed the Energy Roadmap Amendment Act 2025 under its broader energy roadmap. The government says the new law will help deliver affordable, reliable and sustainable energy by improving existing energy assets, while also opening the door to private investment in generation and storage. The law scraps the old renewable energy targets and extends the operational life of coal-fired power stations so they can keep running longer than previously planned, at least until 2046 for many plants. The government argues these changes are about realism and stability, ensuring the lights stay on, energy stays affordable, and legacy infrastructure is maintained while the energy system transitions. But opposition is loud and clear. The Greens, backed by a range of environmental and climate action groups, argue that repealing the renewable targets, locking in coal, and delaying the clean energy transitions is a backward step. They've even moved to rename the legislation to the Propping Up Coal and Delaying Renewables Amendment Act 2025, saying that's a fairer description of what they believe the law actually does. Critics warn the move could spoil investor confidence in renewables, increase emissions, and risk climate goals, including threats to ecosystems like the Great Barrier Reef, which could suffer from extra pollution and delayed emission reductions. So at its core, the debate over this law is about priorities: reliability, cost, and economic flexibility versus clean energy, climate responsibility, and long-term environmental risks. I'm not taking sides here, but I think this is one of those stories where the consequences are going to ripple through both people's electricity bills and through our future environment. I'm sure with this channel's diverse audience, there'll be people with opinions right across the spectrum on what's the best way to go. And while we're talking fossil fuels, the Queensland Greens have called on the Arts Minister to end a long-standing sponsorship deal between the Queensland Museum and Shell's Queensland Gas Company after an investigation found the fossil fuel giant has funded school-level learning materials that critics say are biased and scientifically inaccurate. According to the report from climate advocacy group Comms Declare, Shell has provided more than $10 million to the museum since 2015 to fund programs aimed at children, including kids as young as primary school age, under what's called the Future Makers Initiative. Critics say many of the resources downplay or omit the role of fossil fuels as the primary driver of climate change, instead focusing on adaptation or technologies like carbon capture and storage without clearly explaining their limitations. In some materials analysed, topics like ocean acidification are discussed without ever linking them back to the burning of coal, oil and gas, despite overwhelming scientific evidence that these emissions are the dominant cause. The Greens, backed by parents, educators and environmental groups, argue this undermines evidence-based science education. They've also highlighted legal advice suggesting the sponsorship might conflict with the Queensland Museum's Founding Act, which requires it to provide leadership in communicating the state's natural heritage. On the other side, the museum and government supporters say the partnership has helped deliver STEM education to hundreds of thousands of students and that the museum's materials are aligned with the Australian curriculum. It's a clear conflict of interest debate. Where does funding cross over into influence? The last update that may be relevant no matter which LGA you're in is that the state government has announced a batch of grants to help local councils fund improved active transport infrastructure. They're offering grants of up to $15 million to councils to build better walking and cycling infrastructure through projects in the 2026-27 financial year. Funding will be given on a matched 50-50 basis with local councils. Before we move on to the LGA specific updates, a shout out to the sponsor of this video, winner of Best International Travel Insurance for Value in Finder's 2024 Travel Insurance Awards, and local Brisbane business Wise and Silent Travel Insurance. They won the 2024 Value Award because it costs less on average but covers you for more. They're also the official travel insurance provider for Australian passengers on Scoot Airlines. Backed by a global insurance provider and a 24/7 medical assistance team, the rave reviews on Trustpilot confirm you can travel with total peace of mind if you choose Wise and Silent for your next overseas trip. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to get an exclusive 10% discount on your premium. Now to the LGA specific updates, and we'll start in Brisbane as usual. There's two proposed plans that Council have announced that both relate to short-term accommodation. Firstly, an effort to increase the availability of accommodation for visitors to the city. We mentioned in a recent update that Brisbane was found to be desperately short of hotel accommodation in the lead up to the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and Brisbane City has put forward a proposal to encourage pub owners to deliver new accommodation and function spaces on large underutilised sites in the suburbs. With reduced demand for hotel rooms due to COVID, followed by a 40% increase in construction costs, construction of hotels dropped by 90% between 2019 and 2024. Council claims that its suburban pub stays strategy will facilitate smaller scale projects that can be delivered more efficiently than larger inner city construction, and that redeveloping just 20 suburban pubs could add more than 1,600 new rooms to the city's hotel supply. But while they're trying to add to supply of accommodation, they also want to free up homes for people to rent in the suburbs, which brings us to the other accommodation-related update for Brisbane. This week, Council announced that owners of properties in low and medium density zones that rent out homes for short stay accommodation platforms such as Airbnb will be required to obtain appropriate development approval or cease operating them as short stay accommodation by mid-next year. They'll also need to nominate a 24-hour contact person who can respond to complaints and report to Council, provide guests with house rules, display the permit number in all advertisements, be adequately insured, and obtain any other approvals mandated by Council. It's estimated that almost 500 homes operating as short stay accommodation in Brisbane suburbs will have to cease operating and return to the long-term rental market by the 30th of June 2026. These rules won't apply to short stay accommodation in high-density inner-city areas, though. But speaking of the inner city, one area with the potential to be developed into hotel or residential accommodation has been released on Turbot Street at the northern edge of the Brisbane CBD. The heritage-listed Queensland Dental Hospital and College, along with vacant land next to it, have been released to market by the state government, together taking up 8,900 square metres. The former dental hospital was built between 1938 and 1941, but has sat vacant since 2017. It will be restored and reinvented, with developers invited to place expressions of interest to turn it, along with the land beside it, into hotel, residential or office space. Of course, we'll keep you updated as details emerge when the bids start rolling in. Getting into the Christmas spirit now, and Brisbane's 8 bus depots have faced off, each decorating a bus to vie for the glory of winning the prize for Brisbane's most Christmassy bus. Some depots allowed their workers to decorate the buses on the clock, but others had to volunteer in their own time. Each bus had a different theme, with everything from the Grinch and a gingerbread bus to a Nutcracker-themed bus and Where's Wally? But there could only be one winner, announced by Council's Transport Chair Andrew Wines.
The winner was really hard to pick. The winner is this one, the Willawong bus, but the Virginia bus was very, very, very good, as were they all really. But this one was just special with the extra effort and the gingerbread theming all throughout. It was a difficult choice, but I think a clear winner.
I actually agree that the gingerbread bus was the best. It actually even smelt like gingerbread. Congratulations to the Willawong depot. The buses will be running as part of the city's regular services, but there's no way to know when one will come along. It just comes down to luck. Let me know if you get one. This video's sponsor, YB Painting, is also getting into the Christmas spirit with a special 15% discount for channel viewers. They've recently won first or second place in 5 different categories of the Master Painters Australia Queensland Awards for 2025, and when you see their professionalism and the quality of their work, it's no surprise. With fixed pricing and a 5-year warranty on all their work, you can be sure there'll be no unpleasant surprises. Claim your special 15% discount by scanning this QR code or the link in the video description by New Year's Day. Moving to the Redlands, where construction of a new $5 million electro-technology centre is underway at Alexandra Hills TAFE. Buildings that currently sit empty will be transformed into modern workshops with cutting-edge technology, where 140 students will take electrotechnology courses each year, supplying electricians and technicians to the local community. With potential to add to housing in the Redlands, zoning has been approved for a new housing community of up to 800 homes in the Southern Thornlands Priority Development Area. The land, which had been classified as rural, will be transformed into a master-planned community with a village heart and a mix of homes, retail and community spaces. There is also a target of 20% affordable housing. Moving across to Logan, and in light of the community pushback against the city's updated flood mapping, which we covered in previous update videos, it's now looking likely that Council will investigate changing aspects of the mapping. Many residents were outraged at the possibility of insurance premiums being increased for low-risk properties, including those deemed at risk of being affected by a 1 in 2,000 year flood. Other aspects of the mapping, such as terminology that had the potential for misunderstanding, will likely be examined. Of course, we'll keep across it and make sure you're up to date with any developments. As long as you're subscribed here and following our Instagram, you'll always be in the loop. Moving now to Moreton Bay, where we have a handful of updates. Firstly, a report released by the University of the Sunshine Coast outlining how the region could grow into a prosperous, connected and sustainable city as it approaches a population of 1 million over the next 30 years. According to the report, under the preferred growth scenario, the city's economy could more than triple to around $78.5 billion, with 4 out of 5 residents working locally rather than commuting out of the area. It also projects the gross regional product per person being lifted from roughly $45,800 today to over $77,300 in present-day dollars, creating around 402,000 local jobs and more than doubling the number of businesses. Mayor Peter Flannery described it as a wake-up call, pointing out that while population growth is inevitable, deliberately planning for high-value jobs, connectivity, and resilience will be essential if the region is to thrive rather than just grow. The report identifies 5 economic priorities, including productive growth, polycentric planning, accelerating and growing talent, accelerating innovation, and building resilience, all aimed at positioning the city as a competitive economic hub in southeast Queensland while preserving about 75% of land for natural and productive landscapes. We mentioned Moreton Bay's new city plan a few weeks ago and promised to unpack it in detail in a dedicated video. Well, don't worry, it is coming, but will likely be released in January or February here on the Brisbane Channel. The final update for Moreton Bay is a bit of a feel-good story. Burpengary has welcomed a border collie named Scout, a story dog, to their library. Storydogs are provided by a charity with the same name that aims to encourage children who are struggling with literacy or lack confidence to read aloud to a dog instead. Mayor Peter Flannery says that the dogs are naturally accepting and non-judgmental, and this helps children relax, focus, and build their confidence. The program, which is now running in 4 libraries across Moreton Bay, offers 15 to 20-minute individual reading sessions for families and is so popular that it's often booked out weeks in advance. There'll be more updates on the Posts tab and community page of this channel on YouTube and on the Brisbane Channel's Instagram account, so make sure you check those as well from time to time. It's now time for me to give my 2 cents on something. Every week as I prepare for these update videos, I go through media releases from all sides of politics, state government, opposition parties, crossbench MPs, local councils, and something I find frustrating is just how adversarial our political culture is here in Australia. To be honest, I'm not even all that interested in politics, but it's something that I have to deal with on a daily basis if I'm going to help keep the people of Greater Brisbane updated on what's going on in our communities. Even when 2 parties broadly agree on the direction of a policy, the messaging still seems to frame the other side as wrong, incompetent, or malicious. It feels like there's almost an unwritten rule that no party is allowed to admit the other side might occasionally be doing something positive. I get that having ideas contested can be a positive process that helps refine them and find areas for improvement, but sometimes it feels like the competitive mindset is so strong that collaboration becomes a weakness, and acknowledging common ground becomes impossible. And don't get me started on the catchphrases whose inclusion seems to be a requirement in media releases and public addresses. For the state LNP government, for example, it's Labor's decade of decline, that they love to include in every single statement or release. Expressions like the coalition of chaos that we often hear in Brisbane City Council meetings is another expression referring to Labor and the Greens, who sit on the opposite side of the aisle. And it's not just limited to the LNP. Labor releases are just as focused on pushing down the LNP majority in Brisbane City Council, for example, even when acknowledging positive shifts in plans and policies. The Greens seem not to do it to the same level, instead attacking the policies themselves, but I don't get as much communication from them, so I'm basing that on very limited experience. I certainly don't feel that any party is faultless, so don't take that as an endorsement from me. The thing is that most people I speak to, and probably most of the people watching, don't really care which party gets credit for ideas and policies. They just want solutions that work. Housing, energy, transport, education, cost of living, these are the things that matter to the people of Brisbane, not who's the more despicable party. I can't help thinking we'd get better outcomes if political debate was less about point scoring and pushing the other side down, and more about building on each other's good ideas when they do come along. Anyway, that's just something that I've been noticing more and more as I sift through these releases each week, and I wonder what your views are on this. If you've got thoughts on it, feel free to drop them in the comments. Oh, and I had a recent comment on a video about ad placement in these videos. I'd really love to have no ads at all, but let me share the challenges I face. I try to make sure I'm giving you updates and information that's broad, relevant, and accurate. Researching these topics takes a lot of time, but then I also need to fact check to make sure what I find is actually accurate and true. I also often need to fill myself in on background information or local details that I might not be across so that I understand more of the context. Then I have to work out what to include and what not to, as nobody's going to sit through a 1-hour update video every week. Then scripting, recording, and the editing process itself takes at least a full day, if not 2. Even creating a few thumbnail images to test and writing the video description with chapter divisions for the timestamps adds a few hours to the process. So one of these videos requires 3 or 4 long days altogether to make. I've made a firm decision to not have more than 2 sponsors per video, 1 on shorter videos, and I also want to ensure the price for a placement is fair and brings good value to the businesses I promote. So while sponsorships make running this channel doable, I'm certainly not getting rich off that source of revenue. Channel memberships certainly help, and while they cover the cost of things like software subscriptions and stock footage and music used in the videos, the income from sponsorship and memberships combined is barely enough for the channel to break even. That means for now, I really do rely on YouTube ad revenue to complete the picture and keep the channel sustainable. Long term, I'd love to reduce the number of ads or even remove them entirely, but that will depend on either far more people becoming channel members or the channel growing much larger so that sponsorship can cover more of the workload. For now, ads are just a necessary evil. Of course, if ads really bother you, YouTube Premium removes them entirely. Though if you're choosing where to spend your money, I'd personally prefer you become a channel member. But I'm not comfortable pushing that too hard either. So for now, ads are just a practical part of making these updates possible without charging viewers. And I genuinely appreciate every member and everyone who supports this channel through Buy Me a Coffee. Without you, the channel simply wouldn't be possible. So thank you. In the coming week, I'll be doing a video that looks back on the highlights and lowlights of 2025 for Greater Brisbane, as well as the channel itself, including a bit of detail on when you can expect some of the extra videos that I've been promising. So keep an eye out for that, and of course the 2 remaining weekly updates for 2025. See ya.